It's hard to watch this. That was 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017. Chemical weapons, gas, of different varieties, when he wasn't supposed to have any left. Any left. But that's not all they use. They use these barrel bombs. I want you to take a look at this. This is from April 17, 2015, Wall Street Journal. Go ahead.
Devastation in the rebel-held Sukhari neighborhood of Aleppo on Wednesday. Activists blame a barrel bombing by government forces. At least 100 people have been killed in the past week. Locals say it's a direct result of a fatwa by a pro-government cleric calling for the annihilation of areas outside the Assad regime's control. A barrel bombing in the southwest of Damascus in January last year. Barrel bombs are cheap, crude devices, essentially barrels filled with high explosives and other materials such as scrap metal. 5 months later, another bombing captured on film by local activists in the same region. According to warhead expert Richard Lloyd, the military modify the design of the bombs, placing large fins at the back to stabilize them as they fall. Human Rights Watch says the Syrian government fly helicopters above rebel-held areas at high altitudes to avoid being shot down. Then it drops barrel bombs randomly on the civilian population. 2 years ago, video surfaced which activists claim could be leaked Syrian army footage. It shows the interior of a helicopter where a crew member can be seen lighting the fuse of a barrel bomb before throwing it out. Thousands of people have been killed from barrel bombings in Syria. Here, a lucky escape from a 2-month-old baby following a barrel bomb attack in Aleppo in July. A UN resolution condemning the use of barrel bombs has done nothing to stop Assad from using them, as Syria's civil war enters its 5th year.
December 3rd, 2012, Barack Obama warns Bashar al-Assad as Syria readies chemical weapons. And he warns them, you better not use those chemical weapons. Check this out from The Guardian. Go ahead.
Today, I want to make it absolutely clear to Assad and those under his command, the world is watching. The use of chemical weapons is and would be totally unacceptable. And if you make the tragic mistake of using these weapons, there will be consequences and you will be held accountable.
Well, there really weren't consequences, and he wasn't held accountable. And the Russians come in because he is a stooge for the Russians. The Russians want to keep or get a foothold in the Middle East, get back involved, as they did with his father. And they prop him up, and they build him up, and they build an air base there and a naval base there, and they assist him with the genocide and atrocities against his own people. And I hear so-called conservatives in this country, pseudo-conservatives, they're jokes, they're fakes, go on and on about how Putin is helping us fight ISIS. He's not helping us fight ISIS. These so-called rebel areas, many of those areas, they're allies of ours. We train some of these people. Others, they just want to be left alone. And so that's what's going on in many respects. Now, I want you to check this out. This is from March 25th and May 25th, 2016, and March 16, 2016, Frontline and The Atlantic. Go ahead.
The president ordered the military to get ready.
So down at Central Command in Tampa, they were drawing up possible targets. They had lists of what could be hit on the first day, what could be hit on the second day.
The consensus was that the Pentagon would launch strikes on Saturday, August 31st.
Our finger was on the trigger. We had gone through the targeting plans and the targeting solutions. The crews were alerted, and so we had everything in place, and we were just waiting for instructions to proceed.
And The threat of U.S. action was enough to, have a significant effect on the ground. It was noted all over the Arab world that suddenly people in the regime were panicking.
But Obama's having second thoughts. He's feeling alone. His friends in Britain say, yes, we're with you, but then Parliament says, no, we're not.
It is clear to me that the British Parliament, reflecting the views of the British people, does not want to see British military action. I get that, and the government will act accordingly.
It was a Friday night, and I got a call from the President of the United States, and he said to me, I am considering an alternative course of action, and he wanted me overnight to consider whether a delay would in any way affect our ability to be effective with our military options.
The next morning, Obama summoned his longtime foreign policy advisor, now Chief of Staff, Dennis McDonough.
And he goes for a walk on the South Lawn with McDonough, and they circle this pathway again and again and again for 45 minutes talking about what to do. And the president tells him, I've got this idea. Why don't we go to Congress and ask them to approve a strike? What he's looking for is buy-in.
As near as we can tell, he worried that he didn't have sufficient political support for what might be a long-running conflict.
The president was looking for a way to not have to make good on the threat that he had made. I think because the president, having drawn that red line, realized that he had no appetite for direct military engagement in Syria.
So he comes back in from this walk with Dennis McDonough, and he tells some of his other advisors, and they can't believe what they're hearing. This is a crazy idea as far as they're concerned. If you go to Congress, they tell him, and you lose a vote like this, it would be devastating to your political standing. And they pushed back, and he held firm.
A few hours later, the president called a press conference in the Rose Garden.
After careful deliberation, I have decided that the United States should take military action against Syrian regime targets. But having made my decision as Commander-in-Chief based on what I am convinced is our national security interests, I will seek authorization for the use of force from the American people's representatives in Congress.
At the time, he was describing it as...
So he's passing the buck. He drew that red line, and he didn't want to enforce it. Politics first. This is a complete lack of leadership, a complete lack of statesmanship. He loses the Brits and so forth and so on because he wasn't a strong leader. So he draws that line. Syria continues to use chemical weapons. He's not sure what to do. The military's ready to go. They have their plans. And by the way, that's why when Donald Trump decided to go, the military already had their plans. They just needed to get in position, and they could do it like that. And he choked. And he tried to dump it on Congress. Go ahead.
Seeking strong political support for this decisive move. He had all the rhetoric of action, but in truth it was stepping back from the imminent attack that was ahead. It was all in motion, and at the last minute, the president blinked.
I think it's devastating to the United States, its credibility.
You do not want to establish an issue with regards to the credibility of the United States.
What's left of the president's credibility is in tatters right now.
The whole story of the Red Line is completely improbable. After he makes his about-face and comes under intense criticism for the about-face, he and John Kerry somehow manage to negotiate with the Russians a deal in which most of Syria's chemical weapons are removed. What the president is telling me over the last couple of months is that not only was this not a screw-up, as is commonly understood, but it's actually for him a very proud moment because he did something without war that could not have been achieved with war. The big debate, and debate to this day, is how much damage did that do to America's credibility in the world? And this is not a debate that's going to be settled anytime soon.
Well, we know it did enormous damage to America's credibility.